All right, so today I get to hang out with what I think really, if I remember those Fees Must Fall days, uh, a young firebrand, if you may. They took to the picket lines, the front lines, demanding free education while they were still students, and they've kind of continued in political life in her case because she's now a member of parliament. I'm hanging out with Fasiha Hassan. She's an ANC MP, one of the youngest, I think, right?
Yep.
Yeah, a lawyer also.
That
Look
one's
at her
to be
face.
debated.
Look at her face. Welcome to Radio 702. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Tshidi. I'm so happy to be here.
So I keep going back to when I met you. And I think one of the interesting things about when people became, for me, politically conscientized, when you realize actually there's more to everything than, worrying about our nails. There's nothing wrong with worrying about your nail colors and your outfits and your boyfriend. There's nothing wrong, but there's a bigger picture. And I think if I'm correct, you were conscientized quite early in your life. Let's speak about little Fasia and what you understood of the world.
Yeah, so I know some people don't always think of it as a good thing, but my parents were very involved in the anti-apartheid struggle, activists, and then sort of entered local government at a very early part of our democracy. So I sort of grew up around that. I grew up going with my parents into communities. I mean, I have this, I don't know if it's endearing kind of story, but just following my dad's shoes as we would do community work and do door-to-doors and all of that, and sometimes following the wrong shoes and going in the wrong direction. But that's sort of the kind of upbringing. But to be honest, CD, I think I came into my own political identity, or at least conscientization. You're quite right. I think during my university and student experience, and it was before Fees Must Fall, I think it led into that. But you go in, you become a little bit active in student life, and you see exactly what you always knew was there, that inequality. But it becomes so stark because the person who's sitting next to you in a lecture theatre is maybe on NSFAS, maybe not. That NSFAS stipend has to go home. You sort of have every other opportunity to succeed, and the person sitting next to you is expected to succeed at the same level with half or less than half the opportunities, right? And that was one of the things that really made me say, well, how do I get involved in student politics? How do I ultimately then run for the SRC? I think even in that time, we did some work around student hunger. And I saw most recently, I don't know if it was, I don't know who did the sort of poll, but it came out quite recently around what do young people actually face? And one of those things, interestingly enough, makes complete sense, is also around hunger. So, those sorts of elements. And that fast forward is what ultimately led to us saying, well, if there's this fee increment that Fitz wanted, how are we going to afford it if we can't afford the fees at the moment? And that's actually what I think led not just myself, but so many young people to saying, we're going to take to the picket lines. We're actually going to have a say. And we're tired of a generation well older than us deciding what our future looks like. We're actually going to change what we think or what we actually really care about. And at that time, it was higher education.
What is going through your mind about your personal participation? And also we've seen the scenes because Fees Must Fall got violent. I think people underestimate how
hectic.
violent Fees Must Fall got. Even we as journalists experienced it. What was going through your head as you watched it also intensifying? Did you have moments where you question your participation and whether or not you're moving in the right direction?
I think there were moments in which you question, when it's just yourself that you're accountable for. There's less of a space in which you can collapse, right? But when you've led hundreds of thousands effectively of young people into this kind of protest, which was becoming increasingly violent because of the police and the approach by the security cluster, I think the questions that I had is, what have we led young people into? What are the outcomes of this? And as it got more and more hectic and more people got hurt and arrested, that was a really difficult thing to contend with because, and by no means am I making the comparison directly. I do wonder if you then at some point say, well, and I suppose it's now the 10-year mark, right? Reflective.
So you have to reflect. That's why I'm asking you so many questions about it as well.
And
you
even
have to
here,
look back. Yeah,
even here, I also wonder, was it the most responsible thing to do sometimes, right? Not to, and I don't mean this in terms of the fight. The fight was completely correct.
Worth it, yeah.
Completely worth it. What I always wonder, and I think very personally about, so I was in the SRC already, and there was a young woman. We were running from the police, tear gas. It was the day that Shaira got shot. And this girl from running from the police had fallen and broke her leg. And of course, she couldn't continue running. I mean, she had broken her leg. And we were trying to help her. People were like,
It's not when the stun grenade went off in front of, I think on the one side of, it was outside in the Brum Street.
that was a bit different, but this one
Okay.
was not far from Flower Hall. It was on
Okay.
Wits campus, and the police were really, really heavy-handed. And later on, we took her to Charlotte Maxeke Hospital, and I remember her father coming and sort of pulling us aside, and he said to me, like, what's wrong with you? We left our kids and our children, yes, in the university's care, but you are the SRC. We left her in your care. You are her leader. How did this happen? How did this happen on your watch? And it was a very, I had nothing to say, Tshidi, because, apart from the undressing, it was the point of, it's not about you. It's not about all of what you think. You're leading so many people who trust you and trust the grand or the greater plan and the leadership to lead them in the right direction. And sometimes that's going to be extremely difficult. But I reflect on that 10 years later because I'm still in an elected position, more so than ever before. And I think it's very easy from the outside to throw stones. But when you're accountable for millions of lives, you do have to think differently. You have to think, well, what are the outcomes for the most marginalized, the gogo on the side of the street who's struggling to sell her tomatoes and her potatoes? And, what are we doing to fight for her? And I'm making that parallel because that's sort of where I am now. Those lessons we learned during Fees Must Fall are perhaps even more apt now than they were then.
I'm going to come back to the politics. It's very difficult to have a conversation with Fasiha and not speak politics because so much of who and what you are is political. But what do you do outside? I know you are. Do you still call you newlywed? I know you.
I don't know
still
how
fall
long.
under that umbrella of newlywed.
I don't know how long that holds.
Yeah, I actually don't even know what the parameters are. But there's that part of your life. Let's speak about other avenues, what other aspects, how people understand Fasiha. And even her downtime. You said you're worried I'll judge your music. I'll judge it a little bit. I'll play a few other songs in a bit. But beyond the politics and what we engage.
Yeah, so I was terrified, all of our listeners, to forward all these songs because my friends always tease me about this. They're always like, your taste in music. Let's say I don't have the most sophisticated taste in music. Let's say it like that. And then we'll let our listeners judge a little bit later.
No, it's not that bad. But what do you do downtime outside of what people think they know? They know about you in that Fees Must Fall era. Like I said, in my head, I still think you fit under the bracket of newlywed. The other avenues of Fasiha Hassan, I think, even for our listeners who want to engage you, by the way, guys, you can call in. You can send a WhatsApp or voice note, 011-883-0702 if you want to put questions to our guest, 072-702-1702 if you want to send in voice notes or WhatsApps. When did you first hear of Fasiha Hassan? If people remember the voices of those littlies at the universities who were taking a firm stand about what they believed in, what do you remember about, what do you know, when did you engage her, what do you want to know about Fasiha Hassan? I think I'm going to take a quick break and then we'll come back and maybe I'll play a song. Then you can judge her for her music. Why Ama?
Actually, my husband introduced me to it because he's part of the brigade of Fasiha doesn't like good music. So we need to teach
We
her.
must thank him.
Yeah, there's a whole brigade of friends and family members who are like, we need to teach you, proper music.
Because I saw Tiesto here and I was judging you because Tiesto makes me think of the rave generation.
So,
and it
guys,
makes me wonder if that's who you are. Is that like when you go out, are you those people in 2025 who's looking for a rave?
Look, I'll tell you what my friends say and then I'll tell you my view. They say my taste in music is quote unquote Indian boy. Because it's sort of stuck in the EDM electro phase. And to be frank, I enjoy the music. I mean, I know people are going to laugh at me. I know I'm admitting it on national radio, but I enjoy it. You know that, it's easy to dance to. I'm not the best dancer. So it actually goes down quite well because if that's all you have to do, like the fist pump, I mean, really, it's easy to master.
I'm judging
you got to know your talents.
I'm judging even more. I'm seeing the WhatsApps. I'm going to come to the WhatsApps and the voice notes. But before I do so, let's speak about your husband. I keep saying newlywed, whether I think you still fit in that bracket. Where did you meet? When did you get married? And what's it been like?
Yeah, so interesting one. We actually only met in 2020, but we went to like similar schools. We have so many mutual friends. In fact, he was a leader during the same time of
Also
Fees Must Fall,
political.
Roads Must Fall. He was the spokesperson of Open Stellenbosch and he was very involved in RMF and all of that stuff. In fact, see, there was a panel that Kule and I were meant to both be on. And then the Vitsies, we sort of chickened out. We didn't go to it. And then he went. And so there were all these points in our lives where we should have met. Like, if I just show you our social circles, we should have met. And the only time we did is when a mutual friend actually introduced us. And I wasn't even interested. I was like, nah, not too keen. But she was like adamant, And when I did, it was one of those, I know this sounds ridiculous, but it was just one of those things where everything just fell into place and we met at the right time. So we got married end of 2023. So it's about a year and a half now. Am I right? Yeah, just about a year and a half.
So you still fit in that bracket, yeah.
Yeah, I guess 2 years.
And juggling all of that with everything else.
Tough. I think also because within 6 months of marriage, I got elected to Parliament and then the up and down started. So the Cape Town, Joburg. And for people who don't know, like you have to come home to your constituency and your base every weekend if you can, because you don't want to be far from your community. You don't want to be far from the people who elected you. So that's been, frankly speaking, a bit tough. But I think it's actually good that it's happened sort of early on because we're setting the kinds of processes right at the beginning for both of us to have hopefully very successful careers.
I'm going to go to the WhatsApp lines. There are a couple of messages that have come in for you. The first one says, I'd like to find out why she chose the ANC, given its history of of looting and corruption, state capture, and all that. Like as a young person to another young person, why is the ANC the home that you've chosen?
I get this question quite a lot, actually, right? A lot of people are like, oh, we like you, we believe in you. What about the ANC? And to be honest, Tshidi, I still fundamentally believe that the ANC is the vehicle for change. I'm not running away from the fact that there are challenges and there are flaws in the organization. But you can call me a masochist or a sadist, but I fundamentally think that our generational mission is to clean up the ANC. 20 years from now, when we look back at this period, I don't want to be a person who folded their arms and said, well, we just allowed it to die. It's an incredible liberation movement, and I think there's a role for it to play. But I'm also the kind of person who doesn't run away from a challenge or a fight. And I feel like if enough of us leave, there's nobody to stare down the bullies in the playground. One of the things about some of the very nefarious elements that we're trying to get rid of is they don't expect anyone to square them down, stare them down in the face. And I think that there's an ability that we have to do that because, yes, we went to university, because I have options, but also because 62 million South Africans need someone to stand up for them, not only in opposition benches, but even inside the ANC, because they don't get to steal the ANC literally and decide that this is our history and this is what we're going to be known for. So I believe it's the right vehicle. I may be wrong in the future, sure, but this is where I believe the best change can happen. And ultimately, if you look at it, we're still in the majority, right? Even if there's a GNU, we're still the largest party. You still have bigger space, I think, to implement some change.
That's an interesting one because there is a view that what your generation will inherit is a shall, but I mean, that's up to time, to tell. Somebody on Twitter says, let me tell you now, somebody on Twitter says, Tato Silwane says, this is a bad song.
I knew it. I knew this was going to come.
Must be arrested. I don't know if I agree with that.
I like the song.
No, I think it's not a bad song at all. Another question for you. What does she feel has been the progress or impact on the Fees Must Fall movement? And as one of the faces, is she happy with the progress and impact?
I think we did an incredible thing at the time as a collective by putting the issue not only of higher education but of young people onto literally the dinner tables of South Africans across class groups, across racial groups. And there was progress at the time, when NSFAS changed from being a loan to a grant and, all the thresholds increasing. However, I am worried that the current state of higher education is not where we want it to be. And sometimes people say to us, well, Fees Must Fall is over. And we may have moved on, but the fight is not over. Until we have a free, decolonized education that is completely accessible, that, serves the needs not only of the economy, but of our people, Fees Must Fall is never going to be over. It may not be us, it may be different people and different faces, but that struggle continues. So the long and the short of it is I think we've moved the marker, but I by no means think that we're done. And I am a little bit worried that maybe there's some regression that may have occurred since then. And also, it's 10 years, right? 10 years since then. I think we do need to reflect on what has happened and what hasn't.
Do you remember where you were in December 2017
When he
when
announced.
former President Jacob Zuma, after everything that had happened, suddenly goes, yes, free education. That's what you want, that's what you get.
Yeah, I was sitting in the car actually and then heard it on the radio. We actually didn't know that was coming. Maybe other people did, but even those of us in the ANC Youth League, I was in SASCO at the time, we didn't know. And there was a big part of me that's like, wow, like, did I really hear that? But
Did
another,
you believe it?
no, well, this is the more pragmatic part of me that was like, hold on. He's on his way out. It's a few days or a week before ANC conference. Who's actually going to implement this? And like, we were always told there's no money. I'm like, where did the money suddenly come from? So that was a more pragmatic part. But actually, Tshidi, what that did, to be honest, is it forced government to make some sort of contingency measure. And what that did at the time, I was in the South African Union of Students, the national SRC body, SAUS. We were then able to go to the department and National Treasury the following year in January and say, hold on, you can't run away now. The president made an announcement. It's public. You owe it to millions of young people to find a way, And that, to be fair, really did help, in my opinion, move that marker in a structural way. So beyond the conversation, beyond just universities, but at a point in which we could bring it forward. And I think even now, even higher education, the PC, the portfolio committee, people are watching, they're interested. And I think that also comes from that time period, because you can't ignore the fact that, yes, it's a ticking time bomb, but you also can't ignore the fact that our future sits there.
It's true. Our future sits there. I don't know if they're watching for the same reasons. I remember people feeling that the former president handed the ANC a Molotov cocktail. That's all I thought. 10:34. We are in conversation with Fasiha Hassan. It's the Hanging Out feature. Tshidi Madia in for Clement. Do you know the name Fasiha Hassan? When did you first come across it? I keep saying it was those days of those fees must fall protests. What do you want to know from Fasiha Hassan? Fasiha, let me tell you, there's somebody here, Suzanne from Cosmos says, she loves your choice in music.
I love that. Thank you,
No
Suzanne.
comment to you and Suzanne collectively.
Thanks.
Let's speak about mentorship. Who do you turn to? I know that you were, I think at some point, close to the late J.C. Duarte.
Yeah, definitely.
That relationship as well, how did it form? And who else do you look to for guidance?
It definitely formed in the earlier years of student politics and fees must fall. It's an interesting thing. We really, we backed ourselves when we were there. Hey, we really thought we were invincible.
When you're doing fees must fall, yes,
yo,
I can tell you
we
did.
we were feeling ourselves. And like the getting in practice of telling off old leaders, which we still do, but I think now we do it in different ways. Anyway, one of those leaders was the late Deputy Secretary General Jessie Duarte. And let me tell you, she dismembered us, verbally.
That sounds like Jessie
Yeah,
Duarte.
yeah,
to
no,
me.
she knew far more than we did
Yeah.
about what was going on, frankly. And at the end of that meeting, I was like, no, but this is a formidable lady. If she could take the time to know all these things about our issues and our struggles, this is somebody who does deeply care. And there was times in which I was very disillusioned with the movement. I mean, I'm not going to be dishonest about it. I've spoken about it before. It's a human experience. You get disappointed, you get angry. And she was one of the people who, and she's not the only one, and I'll speak to the Mamwini Mandigizela Mandela as well, but she was one of those people who put things into perspective, who showed us the bigger picture when I was very close to being like, F it, I'm done, throw in the towel. Actually, there's a much bigger journey here. And it's not about you. It's not about, your handful of student leaders. It's about the history of anti-colonialism and anti-imperialism in the continent. And you have a very small role to play, but you have a role to play. And one of the other people at that time who was also very pivotal, and we must speak about her because unfortunately Mamwini's legacy was, attacked so much.
Yeah.
And there wasn't this room for nuance. All of a sudden, only male leaders can have nuance, right? Women leaders make mistakes. They're this, they're that. And that's not running away from anyone's flaws. It's about saying that there's a side of these women leaders that we saw who didn't talk us down, they listened. And they said, well, actually, you're right, that in a post-democratic South Africa, you may not have lived through the struggle, but what you're saying is so equally important. And there is a role for you as young people to take up this mantle. And for that, I will be forever grateful, because when she stood with us, Mamweni, the country changed. Senior leaders in and outside of the ANC changed their views, because she said, actually, I'm with these young people. I would love to be on the picket lines. I'm a little bit old, but, I would love to be there. And that was critical. And the last person I must mention is Dr. Naledi Pandor, who, you may not be a minister right now, but I've learned the gravitas of fighting that. I mean, just think about her in the AU, in the UN, in all of these echelons of power.
Global stage. And again, dismantling colonial powers. Like, not just knowing and having the content, but the ability to do it with such grace and such respect that she walked out, not just a minister of South Africa, but a leader of the global south, of the world, of all oppressed peoples. And I must mention her because she's alive. She's still with us. And I have a deep respect for her. And then being young and being a woman in the spaces that you are in, you're right. Politics hardly affords women any space. What's it like? What are the challenges? Do you feel that you are clawing your way to either relevance or respect, or your voice being heard in those spaces, be it branch meetings when regions are gathered, and Parliament itself?
The rules are different for women, and that's part of the problem. So where I mentioned earlier, there's nuance, there's room for, I think, mistake and error for others, but there's even less for women and much less for young women. So that brings with it its own level of anxiety, that own level of burden. I mean, even coming here, I was like, oh my God, what are people going to think about my music choices? That's on a lighter note.
Yeah.
But you're always so worried about how you're perceived and what you need to do. So that's one element. But Tshidi, what I've learned in the movement, and a lot of people also say, like, how do you go into like BGMs, branch general meetings, regions, provinces, etc.? You work hard. You must be a human about it. You go, you sit with everybody, you spend all these hours, and you earn respect. You're not given respect, you earn it. And that's one of the things that I've had to learn in the space. But also, and I'll end on this, we see politics in the theater of it. We see the spectacle of politics.
Yes.
But we rarely see, we rarely see the hard work, the committee meetings, the, meetings with community members who just come and need to be heard and listened to. And that, for me, is actually the bigger terrain. So what we see is one thing. That's why everyone has a particular idea of all politicians or all people in the public space. But you don't see, or you rarely see, the real work that happens. And that's far less glamorous. It's hard, it's slogging, it's tiring, it's long, and I think that's what our country needs to also see, because right now we're seeing this trend of parliamentary PCs and fire and throwing things at each other, if proverbially and not. And the reality is, we're not doing the work we should be when we're doing that, right? We're not doing the unsexy work of going through the line item of the budget to say, well, why is money cut here but given there? But that's the less interesting conversation, yet the more important one.
I'm going to play another one of your songs.
Ooh.
Now, I suspect people are going to like this one. Let's try some, maybe Gregory Porter. How's Gregory Porter? Able?
Hey, Laura, it's me. Sorry, but I had to ring your doorbell so late. But there's something bothering me. I really am sorry, but it just couldn't wait. Is there someone else instead of me? Go ahead and lie to me and make me believe you're not in love with him, and this fool will see that the rivers of your love flow uphill to me. Hey, Laura, it's me. Sorry, but I had to ring your doorbell so late. Well, there's there's something bothering me all night long. It just couldn't wait. With a healthy dose of make-believe, go ahead and lie to me and make me believe that you're in love with me. This fool will see that the rivers of your love flow up a hill to me. Hey, Laura. Sorry, but I had to ring your doorbell so late. Well, there's something bothering me all night long. It just couldn't wait. With a healthy dose of make-believe, go ahead and lie to me and make me believe that you're in love with me. This fool will see that the rivers of your love flow up a hill to me. Hey, Laura, it's me. Hey, Laura, it's me. Hey, Laura, it's me.
This is a goodie. This is a goodie, Fasiha, and people are even responding that way. I mean, there's a WhatsApp here that says, Gregory Potter, you have an old soul, a perfect choice.
Yes, people can't see me, but my hands are up in victory.
They can see you. We are
Finally.
live on YouTube. They can absolutely see that victory. So a lot of questions are still coming in for you. I want you to respond to this one. I think this one might be a little bit tricky, but you know what? I've known Fasiha long enough to know that you can tackle this. It's not difficult.
Oh no, let's see.
Let's hear. So, hi, good morning, Tshidi. Can you please ask your guest what's her take on higher education minister and this thing of the ANC Youth League president saying the older generation must give youth a chance to take charge of other things in parliament. Meanwhile, some of the ANC Youth League can't even run the NYDA. That is the conflict, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about higher education. So we have Minister Nkabane, and she's young. She's very well educated. She's got a PhD. She's very smart. And this is actually a little bit about what I was alluding to earlier. When you're a woman in politics, the playing rules, for some reason, of patriarchy, misogyny, etc., are different. There's very little room for mistake. And we must acknowledge that she's coming into a department that has had historic issues. And I will be the first person to say that that department needs a complete restructure, right? And I've said it before. I said it when I was a student. I've said it now when I'm an MP. I've said it when I was in legislature, etc. So I think we must be fair on that level, right? But we also need to understand that it's not an easy job to sort of have. Do I always agree with the minister? Yes and no. I mean, that's part of it, right? Anyone in any political party will have those disagreements. But what I want us to do is be fair in the analysis. In the same way that another of her male counterparts has looked at, are we saying the same things? Are we looking at a Leon Schreiber, for example, and saying, actually, he's mismanaged X, Y, and Z, or actually, he's come in and stolen the victory of an Aaron Motsoaledi, who was the former minister, and now he's just, that last...
People say that, Fasiha. People look at Leon Schreiber and actually say, you came in and these are the works of Aaron Motsoaledi. That is actually articulated.
But is he being... Let's put it in one more other context. Minister Nkabane is facing attacks not only on mainstream media, but on social media, left, right, and center. And I do think she's getting more heat and more fire, not only because of the issue itself, but because we have a different set of rules for women in politics.
And then the youth league aspect where they're saying we need to be given more responsibilities. But you look at the NYDA and you ask yourself, how will you can't even get this agency right?
We need to make a separation. In principle, I will always forever stand by the notion that young people must be given opportunities. And one of the reasons why it's so difficult, not only for the minister, but for many other young people entering into the space, is that these are the first times we're actually getting into decision-making positions, right? Because it's been closed off for so long, there hasn't been a proper pipeline in which you can learn and exercise some sort of process of understanding how the world works, understanding how parliament works, how the executive works, right? And that's fundamentally because those places were closed off to us, right? And I want us to be fair. That being said, the NYDA has a far larger role to play than it has in the past. We haven't leveraged off it as much as possible. And I'm also the kind of person, and this is now Fasiha's view, this is not the party view or Parliament's view, I believe in mainstreaming. I believe that we need to actually, instead of necessarily only having women, youth, and disabilities, and that's why I say it's a Fasiha view, I think we need to mainstream this across departments. I think that we need to say in every single space, and it is there, but when you are sort of relegated to the side, when you're saying there's that, you fight for the same kind. I think it was actually President Thabo Mbeki who said this. When you have a department that's women, youth, and disabilities, for example, and they're doing the best that they can, you go to Treasury to fight alongside a Department of Education, a Department of Health, which are considered, departments or sort of industries that need more money. And so when you mainstream, you actually put it directly into health, directly into education, directly into home affairs, right? And you actually get a lot more out of it. But I'm making a different argument, right? It's not about the people who lead those departments. It's not about any of those. I'm saying, of course, it's hard for us as young people to succeed. There's no blueprint that we have been allowed to learn from, right? And I do think the world is fundamentally different to when the elder generation led. Like I said, we need to do a lot more, and we're also looking forward to the new NYDA board, right? The paper is not the paper, but it's on the president's desk. We are looking forward to that, and let's also be a part of that solution. And that's actually one of the reasons why I'm here. I can be critical fundamentally because I have a dog in the fight. I'm here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
On the WhatsApp line, Sweeto in Kwatema says, your guest must have a very interesting social life, judging from her music tastes. It's kind of older than her age. It's true.
I wish my social life was as exciting as this person thinks.
I asked you earlier, what do you do outside of the politics? And politics, if people don't know, demands so much of your time.
Yeah.
But do you find moments to pick up a book? What do you do in your downtime?
Yeah, so actually I went out this weekend.
Look at you.
I know, shocking. Went to Kramerville. That was a lovely, it's
just on the way.
But let me tell the story properly. We went to Bram first. It was a really
So
cool
you still
gig.
go to Bram?
Well, it was the first time in years. Went in. Shame the event wasn't like that vibey, but I was like, wow, I really tried. And then the second location was actually really great. So I'm very proud of myself. But to be honest with you, Tshidi, it's not as often as I would love it to be. And I also have a lot of social anxiety going into those spaces because before you were very anonymous. You could just be. You could dance anywhere you wanted to. You could hang out with your friends. Now people do recognize us and it comes with its own sort of vibe.
Yeah, phones come out.
Yeah, but also
You've been watched, yeah.
Yeah, let me tell you what I'm reading because I think that might be another opportunity to self-deprecate.
Okay. Oh, goodness.
So I love fiction. I read political literature all the time, but I don't view that as my downtime
Like your
kind
leisure
of reading.
reading, yeah.
Yeah, so my leisure reading, I'm actually reading The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. So if you don't know, I'm a big nerd. So I've read all the Lord of the Rings. I've got all the extended versions. I know all the lore, Game of Thrones as well, Harry Potter, all of the fiction kind of nerdy stuff. That's me. So that when you see me with recreational reading, it's definitely
That's where you
fantasy
are.
fiction.
I'm going to play you a voice note. I've never bothered, and nobody must judge me, to watch Game of Thrones, and I still
No,
refuse.
Tshidi, oh my God,
Still
you have
refuse.
to.
Take a listen to this voice note. I refuse.
It's a reality to foresee actually that there are casualties. There are casualties when people are fighting for the freedom. There are casualties. So my question to her is when she looks at South Africa even today, is there gonna be another bigger match that is gonna happen with this too much youth unemployment and the struggles that we see underground here with the documented foreigners. Is there another brewing fight that is gonna happen? Honestly, I'm asking her that.
I love those kids in the background. I love kids. Kids don't have time for you. They will do what they need to do.
Yeah, and they have strong opinions on
You
issues.
can't tell them anything. But the word predictions, the likes of Ronnie Castles will tell you about the worries about bread riots, and that's a constant thing. And I think he's asking you a very important point. What the future looks like with so much inequality still in your head.
We do have to be realistic, and I'm glad he started off by saying that. And the reality is that we have one of the highest youth unemployments in the world, and it's not only youth, but it happens to also be youth. We have greater inequality as it grows and as it grows. And unfortunately, what we also have is, and it's not only happening in South Africa, it's happening all over the world, the rise of this right-wing politic. So you see people trying to blame immigrants or foreign nationals, and that doesn't mean that we don't have an issue of porous borders, etc., etc. But it does mean that certain marginalized groups are being used as a scapegoat. So I am worried. I'm worried because in the most recent election, we saw the rise of ethno-nationalist politics. We saw lots of people vote for the PA because they're a colored party. We saw lots of people vote for MKP because they're a Zulu party. And you sort of seeing this dismantling of the democratic project in South Africa. And one of the big victories we had, and this is not only an ANC victory, this is a South African victory, that we were able to, when the oppressive system of apartheid and colonial powers said, we will divide and conquer, we said no. We're going to come back together. We're going to reorganize across racial lines. We're going to reorganize across class lines. And that's one of the fundamental reasons why we defeated apartheid. Yes, all the different pillars, sanctions, all of those different things of the struggle. But one of the biggest, I thought, most important elements we did was that. And you're seeing an erosion of it. And when you have an erosion like that and you have inequality, 1 + 1 is going to equal 2. And we cannot run away from that until we bring about true economic equality, bring about economic growth, job opportunities, etc., etc. We are in a ticking time bomb. And that's not something any of us can run away from.
Of the four lists, who do you stay in touch with? What's your relationship like with the ones, particularly obviously from Wits, because that's where you were?
Quite, I think, good. I mean, Nompendula and I are still very, very close. I am in Parliament with Naledi Chirwa, with Vuyani Pambo, etc. And generally speaking, I think that we're there. But to be honest, and I think to answer your question more particularly, 10 years on, I don't know if in the more broader circles that we actually want to be around each other sometimes. It was I always say that Fees Must Fall was the best and the worst thing that happened to us. It became very toxic by the end, and it became a very unsafe space, both physically, emotionally, verbally. I mean, we were physically attacked, pulled off stages, things like that. And there's a part of us that completely bonded over that, right? You went through hell and back. And then there's other people where I'm like, nah, we have fundamentally different views, on how we want to build this country. And that's okay, as long as we're building the country.
My parting shot, I told you, time flies when you're having these conversations. What is the vision for Fasiha? People have all manner of ambitions. People want to lead. You guys are going to a conference in 2027. People have presidential ambitions. What are yours? Where do you want to go next?
Make Tshidi my chief lobbyist. I would like to, look, I'm in Parliament now. Even though it's my second term in public office, first term in Parliament, I'm in the Electricity Energy Committee, I'm in Mineral and Petroleum Resources, and I'm in the Judicial Service Commission. I'm finding my feet there slowly but surely, and I really want to make an impact, not only in Parliament, but in society. And so I would like that to be in a political realm. But one thing I will say, Tshidi, is that even if it's not in politics, because you can never rely on a political space, I will always be involved in some sort of activism in our country, and I will build it, whether it's from the inside or the outside. I would like it to be from the inside, but our sleeves are rolled up, and I view it as a long-term life goal to leave this country in a better state than which we currently have it right now.
Earlier, somebody said that she's got an old soul. I've got a surprise for you. There's a little bit of youngness. You spoke about vibes earlier. So I'm going to play her out with this song. It's a local.
Yes.
Do you know what it is? You say yes like that. If I say it's local.
No, it's because I'm worried that someone's gonna be like, I'm waiting for someone to say, we're waiting for you to dance to the song. Then
Oh
I'm
my
just gonna
gosh, because on
collapse.
YouTube people actually expect you to dance.
Oh my God.
But take a listen to this. It's local.
It was gonna be local. I'll come back on the show for that one, but
Yeah, oh her some maporisa.
it was,
If you're
guys. It
wondering,
was.
yeah.
It was. But just to close off. This was also one of the songs that I chose. We're seeing a whole lot of stuff go down in the world, and I know we're all worried. We're worried about a World War III, and this song is really about resistance. It's about the fact that even though you don't feel like you have agency, you do. Grow up until you're taught to fight back.
On that note, I want to call it an end. Thank you so much, Fasiha Hassan.
Hanging out with Clement
on 702.
Let's walk the talk.